I'll never forget the moment I saw them. The motel sign flickered, buzzing like a dying fly, casting a sickly yellow glow over the parking lot. I'd just pulled off the highway after a long shift at the warehouse, my truck's engine still ticking as I stretched my legs. Then there they were, Stella stepping out of room 12, her laugh cutting through the dusk, Levi right behind her, his hand grazing her back. My wife. My gut twisted, sharp and hot, like a knife jammed between my ribs. I ducked behind a rusted pickup, breath shallow, watching them climb into his beat-up sedan and peel out, tires spitting gravel. The air smelled of stale beer and exhaust, thick enough to choke on. I stood there, hands clenched, my work boots grinding into the asphalt. Move, my brain screamed. Chase them. Yell. Smash something. But my feet wouldn't budge. My heart pounded, loud and slow, drowning out the hum of traffic. Why wasn't I raging? Why wasn't I tearing after them? Instead, this cold thing crept up my spine column, clear, dangerous. I exhaled, slow and deliberate, the steam curling in the chilly air. They'd pay. Not now, not loud. Smart. I slid back into my truck, the seat creaking under me, and gripped the wheel till my knuckles whitened. Stella's laugh echoed in my head, sharp as broken glass. How long? How many lies? I pictured Sophie at home, her crayons scattered across the kitchen table, waiting for me to cook dinner while Stella fed me bullshit about late meetings. My jaw tightened. I turned the key, the engine roaring to life, and pulled onto the road. The sun dipped below the horizon, streaking the sky red like a warning. You okay, man? I muttered to myself, voice rough, testing the silence. No answer, just the hum of the tires and the weight of what I'd seen. I could still smell her perfume on my shirt from this morning sweet, fake, clinging like a lie. Had she kissed me goodbye, knowing she'd be with him? My fingers twitched on the gear shift. Part of me wanted to believe I'd gotten it wrong, that it wasn't her. But I knew her walk, that sway in her hips. I'd watched it for years. The warehouse lights faded in my rear view as I headed home. Sophie'd be hungry. I'd cook. I'd smile. But my mind was already spinning phone passwords, cameras, evidence. They thought they were slick, sneaking around in some fleabag motel. They didn't know me. Not the real me. I flicked on the radio, static crackling, and let the noise fill the cab. You're done, I said under my breath, the words hard and final. This wasn't over. It was just starting. I was stirring spaghetti sauce when my phone buzzed with her lie. The kitchen smelled of garlic and tomatoes, Sophie's crayons rolling across the table as she scribbled stick figures. Daddy, more red, she chirped, waving a stubby crayon. I forced a grin, sliding it over, my hand steady, despite the fire, licking up my chest. The text glowed on the screen. School meeting ran late. Can you handle dinner and Sophie's bath? Thanks. I stared at it, sauce bubbling, the wooden spoon creaking in my grip. Late meeting, my ass. I'd seen her with Levi, laughing outside that motel. My jaw clenched tight enough to crack. Be home soon? I typed back, keeping it short, casual. Her reply came fast. Yeah, around 9. Love you, love you. The words hit like a slap. I set the phone down, slow, deliberate, and turned up the heat under the pot. Sophie giggled, oblivious, her little voice filling the room as I plated her dinner. Eat up, kiddo, I said, ruffling her hair. She dug in, sauce smearing her cheeks, while I leaned against the counter, watching the clock tick. 9. Plenty of time to dig. Stella rolled in at 8:57, all smiles and fake yawns. Long day, she sighed, kicking off her shoes. The living room lamp cast shadows across her face, her hair still mussed from whatever she'd been doing with him. Rough one, huh? I said, voice flat, pouring her a glass of water. She nodded, sipping, oblivious to the way my eyes tracked her every move. Staff stuff. Boring, she muttered, then headed for the shower. The second the water hissed on, I moved. Her phone sat on the counter, screen dark, a little bomb waiting to blow. I snatched it up, fingers brushing the cool glass. Pascador anniversary, 0418. Too damn easy. It unlocked with a soft click. And there it was. Levi's name. A dozen texts lighting up the chat. You free tonight? Sophie's such a brat lately. Can't wait to see you again. My stomach churned, bile rising, but I kept scrolling. Then the video grainy, timestamp today, her laughing as he pulled her onto that motel bed. My hands shook, just for a second, before I steadied them. I forwarded it all text, video, everything to my phone, deleted the sent logs, and set her device back like nothing happened. Need anything? I called toward the bathroom, loud enough to cover the thump of my heart. No, I'm good, she yelled back, water still running. Good. I grabbed my laptop from the couch, booted it up, and logged into her messaging app with her credentials. Sync enabled, every word she'd typed to him, I'd see. The screen glowed, casting a blue sheen over Sophie's drawings, and I smirked, sharp and cold. They thought they were untouchable. Idiots. I plated my own spaghetti, sat across from Sophie, and ate like it was any other night. How's school? I asked, twirling pasta, keeping my voice light. Good. We made clay birds. She beamed, crumbs flying. I nodded, chewing slow, my mind racing. Evidence locked down. Next step, make it count. The shower cut off, and Stella patted out in a towel, hair dripping. Smells great, she said, leaning to kiss my cheek. I didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just let her lips brush me. Her damp hair cold against my skin. Long meetings wear you out? I asked, eyes on my plate. She laughed, airy. You have no idea. She grabbed a bowl, sat beside Sophie, and started eating, chattering about some fake staff drama. I nodded along, fork scraping the plate. Every word she said fuel for the fire. My phone buzzed in my pocket copies of her filth safe and sound. Gonna crash early, she said later, stretching, heading to bed. Night, I grunted, clearing the table. The kitchen went quiet, just the hum of the fridge and Sophie's soft snores from the couch where she dozed off. I stood there, hands braced on the sink, staring out the dark window. The reflection showed a man I barely recognized, eyes hard, mouth set. They lied to my face, laughed behind my back. My fingers curled into fists, nails biting my palms. This wasn't rage, this was something better. You're mine now, I muttered, unsure, the plan clicking into place. Dinner was done. The real game was on. I was loading the U-Haul with Sophie's toys when the sun dipped below the trees, painting the street in long, jagged shadows. The air smelled of cut grass and gasoline, the neighborhood quiet except for the clatter of her plastic kitchen, set banging against the truck's metal floor. Daddy, my dolls! Sophie squealed, tugging my sleeve, her sneakers scuffing the driveway. I hoisted her little suitcase pink, covered in unicorn sticker sand, tossed it in next to my duffel. Got 'em right here, kiddo, I said, voice steady, though my hands itched to move faster. Stella was at work, oblivious. Time was mine. The house felt like a shell already. I hauled the couch out, grunting as its springs groaned, and left it by the curb good riddance to her late-night Netflix marathons with Levi's texts lighting up her phone. Sophie darted inside, grabbing her stuffed bear, while I yanked pictures off the walls. Our wedding photo hit the trash with a satisfying crack, glass splintering. Too heavy, I muttered, kicking the bin. The living room echoed now, bare except for Stella's junker yoga mat, her coffee mugs, her lies cluttering the shelves. I didn't touch those. Let her drown in them. Gonna see Grandma? Sophie asked, hugging her bear, eyes big and bright. I crouched, brushing a curl from her face. Yeah, baby, a little trip. My chest tightened. She didn't deserve this mess, but I forced a grin. Gonna be fun, right? She nodded, bouncing, and I stood, scanning the room. The television stayed. The dining table, too. Just enough to make it sting when she walked in. I grabbed my toolbox from the garage, pulled out the security cameras I'd bought last week cheap, but they'd Doan wired them up. One in the living room, angled at the door. Another in the kitchen, catching the table. My phone pinged as they linked, tiny red lights blinking like eyes. Help me with this, Soph, I called, handing her a roll of tape. She giggled, sticking it to her nose. While I set the divorce papers on the table filed yesterday with Rebecca, stamped by the county clerk. I clipped her business card on top, black ink stark against the white. No note. No explanation. She'd get it. I stepped back, hands on my hips, the emptiness loud in my ears. The fridge hummed, the clock ticked, and I pictured her face confusion, then panic. My lips twitched, a half smirk I couldn't stop. The U-Haul was packed by dust clothes, Sophie's crib, my work boots, all crammed in tight. I swept the house one last time, locking the back door, the windows, every click a nail in her coffin. Ready, kiddo? I scooped Sophie up, her bear dangling, and carried her to the truck. She babbled about Grandma's cookies as I buckled her in, the seatbelt snapping shut with a finality that hit me hard. I climbed into the driver's seat, the cab smelling of dust and old leather, and fired up the engine. Headlights cut through the dark, illuminating the mailbox. Hers now. You mad, Daddy? Sophie's voice piped up small and sharp. I glanced at her in the rear view, her head tilted. Nah, I lied, shifting into gear. Just tired. Long day. She nodded, hugging her bear tighter, and I pulled out, the house shrinking behind us. My phone buzzed Stella's text. Leaving soon? You okay? I snorted, tossing it onto the dash. Let her wonder. Let her sweat. The cameras would catch it all, her pacing, her calls, her collapse. I'd watch from Mom, sipping coffee while she unraveled. The highway stretched ahead, black and endless, the rumble of the truck drowning out the noise in my head. Sophie hummed some nursery rhyme, off-key but sweet, and I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. This was Itor exit, clean and quiet. I'd stripped her world bare, left just enough to twist the knife. Part of me ached, seeing Sophie's empty room in my mind, the crayon marks on her wall gone with us. Had I broken her too? I shook it off, jaw tight. No, this was for her. For us? You're gonna love Grandma's, I said, more to myself, voice rough against the hum of the road. Sophie giggled, kicking her feet. I flicked on the radio, static crackling, then a low country tune filled the cab. My fingers drummed the wheel, steady, sure. Stella'd walk into that hollow house soon, maybe an hour, maybe less. She'd see the papers, the silence, the trap I'd set. I pictured her hand shaking, her voice breaking on my voicemail. Good. Let her feel it. Let her choke on it. The road curved, and I pressed the gas, the night swallowing us whole. We were gone. She was next. I was sipping coffee at Mom's when the camera alert pinged, sharp and insistent, against the quiet. Her living room smelled of lavender and old books, the couch sagging under me as I set the mug down, steam curling in the dim light. Sophie napped upstairs, her soft snores drifting through the baby monitor, while Mom puttered in the kitchen, humming some hymn. I grabbed my phone, the screen lighting up with the feed Stella. Stepping through the front door, keys jangling in her hand, she froze, head tilting, like a deer sniffing danger. My lips twitched. Showtime. The living room cam caught her first shoes scuffing the hardwood, her purse thudding to the floor. Elijah? She called, voice thin, bouncing off the empty walls. No couch, no television, just shadows stretching long and cold. She spun, slow at first, then faster, her breath hitching as she took it in. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, the coffee table creaking under my weight. Keep going, I muttered, low and rough, eyes locked on the screen. She darted to the kitchen, and the second cam kicked in her silhouette against the fridge, hands flying to her mouth when she saw the table. The divorce papers sat there, stark white, Rebecca's card glinting under the overhead light. Elijah, she yelled again, louder, cracking. She snatched her phone, dialed me, and my screen buzzed, ignored it. Where are you? Where's Sophie? Her voice shook through the voicemail, high and frantic as she paced, heels clicking. I smirked, sharp and cold, the sound of her panic like music. She stopped, stared at the papers, then flipped through them, her fingers trembling, pages rustling. No, 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 she whispered, sinking into a chair, the one I'd left behind. Her face crumpled, eyes wide, darting like she'd find me hiding in the corners. My laptop pinged, Nexter messaging app syncing. Levi's name popped up. He's gone, she typed, thumb shaky on the screen. Sophie too. There's a lawyer's card. What do we do? I snorted, leaning back, the couch springs groaning. Levi's reply came fast. Megan knows. She's losing it. What the hell do we do? Their words stacked up, a tower of desperation blaming each other, begging for fixes. You said he wouldn't find out, she shot back. You pushed me into this, he fired. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness sharp on my tongue, and watched them unravel, thread by thread. Everything okay, hon? Mom called, poking her head in, apron dusted with flour. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the screen. Yeah, just work stuff. She frowned, but shuffled back, leaving me to it. Stella was on her feet again, pacing tight circles, dialing me over and over 5 calls, 6, each voicemail shorter, angrier. Pick up, you bastard. She snapped in the last one, voice raw. I set the phone down, let it buzz, and stretched my arms, joints popping. She'd figure it out soon. Nobody was coming to save her. The feed flickered as she slumped against the counter, head in her hands, hair falling like a curtain. What did I do? She muttered, barely audible, the mic picking up the tremble. I tilted my head, studying her. What'd you do? You screwed me over, that's what. My fingers drummed the armrest, steady, sure. Rebecca's voice echoed in my head civil suit. 60 grand each filed tomorrow. They'd feel that too. The laptop pinged again. Levi. I'm done. She's kicking me out. Stella, fix this. I laughed, short and harsh, the sound cutting through Mom's humming. Sophie stirred upstairs, a soft whimper crackling through the monitor. I stood, stretching, the floorboards creaking under my boots. Stella was still on the screen, staring at nothing, her world collapsing in real time. You good now? I said to the empty room, voice low, mocking. My chest felt heavy, not regret. Not quite, just the weight of it all piling up. I'd planned this, wanted this, but watching her break was colder than I'd figured. I shook it off, grabbed the monitor, and headed upstairs. Let her stew. Let them both drown. I'd sleep fine tonight. I walked into the conference room, the air thick with tension, buzzing like a live wire under my skin. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the beige walls, the long table scratched and dull from years of fights like this. Rebecca strode beside me, heels clicking, her briefcase thumping as she set it down. Across from us, Stella sat stiff, her hands clasped tight. A slick lawyer Tom, she'd called him, flipping through papers next to her. Levi slouched at the end, eyes sunken, his tie crooked like he'd given up halfway. My boots scuffed the carpet as I took my seat, jaw tight, the weight of Sophie's future pressing on my chest. This was it. Rebecca slid our file across the table, a thick stack of evidence photos, text, that motel video landing with a soft thud. Let's get started, she said, voice crisp, cutting through the hum. Tom cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses, and launched in. My clients endured years of emotional neglect and physical intimidation from Mr. Carter, he said, waving a typed affidavit. She's seeking alimony and joint custody. Stella nodded, her eyes flicking to me, sharp and accusing. I snorted, low and rough, leaning back in my chair. Physical intimidation? Bullshit. My hands itched to slam the table, but I stayed still, letting Rebecca take the lead. Interesting story, she said, cool as ice, tapping our file. Here's the real one. She flipped it open, spreading out the photo, Stella and Levi at the motel, her arm hooked in his, laughing. Tom's brows shot up, his pen freezing mid-note. Dated 6 weeks ago, Rebecca went on, sliding over the text next. Messages between Mrs. Carter and Mr. Thompson, planning meetups, insulting their daughter, Sophie. Explicit content. She paused, letting the video thumbnail sit there. Grainy but unmistakable Stella giggling on that bed. The room went dead quiet, the hum of the lights loud as a scream. Stella's face flushed red, her fingers twisting her ring me ring, still on her hand. That's not, she started, but Tom cut her off, voice sharp. You didn't tell me about this. He shoved his chair back, glasses slipping as he glared at her. You said he hit you? You lied? She stammered. Tu didn't think. He grabbed his briefcase, snapping it shut. I'm done. Good luck. He stormed out, the door banging behind him, leaving her stranded. I smirked, sharp and cold, the sound of his exit like a gunshot in my favor. Levi shifted, his chair creaking, and mumbled, "This isn't what it looks like." I turned on him, slow, deliberate. "Really? 'Cause it looks like you screwing my wife." He flinched, hands shaking, and I leaned forward, voice low. "You got a daughter too, right? What's Megan think of this?" His face went gray, eyes darting to the table. "Please," he whispered, "don't tell the school. I'll lose everything." I stared him down, unblinking. "You don't deserve to teach kids. You're done." He shrank, a kicked dog, and I felt the air shift victory, close enough to taste. Stella slapped the table, her voice rising. "You never helped. Money was tight. You ignored me." Her words cracked, desperate, grasping. I cut in, hard and flat. "That's a lie." Rebecca pulled out bank records, $1,000 a month I'd sent her. Every damn month and my log. Dinners cooked, baths given, bedtime stories read. "Looks like Elijah did plenty," Rebecca said, sliding the papers over. "Primary caregiver, by the numbers." Stella's mouth opened, then shut, her eyes wild, searching for an out that wasn't there. I locked eyes with her, my chest tight, adrenaline pumping. "You thought I wouldn't find out," I said, slow, each word a hammer. "You thought you could play me, Trash Sophie, and walk away clean." Her lips trembled, tears welling, but I didn't blink. "You're nothing to me now." She flinched like I'd hit her, and part of Mebry deep twisted. I'd loved her once, built a life with her. Now, she was a stranger, a ghost in a skirt, drowning in her own mess. I shook it off, jaw clenching. No room for that here. Rebecca leaned in, voice smooth. "We're filing for full custody of Sophie. Divorce. Effective immediately. Civil suit against both $60,000 each for emotional distress." Stella gasped, a choked sob, and Levi groaned, head dropping to his hands. "I can't pay that," he muttered, voice breaking. "Should have thought of that before." I snapped, standing, my chair scraping back. The room spun for a second anger, relief, something heavier crashing together. I'd won, but it didn't feel clean. It felt raw, jagged, like glass in my throat. "Anything else?" Rebecca asked, packing up, her calm a lifeline. Stella shook her head, tears streaking her face, and Levi just sat there, a puddle of a man. I turned to go, boots heavy on the carpet, but Stella's voice stopped me. "Elijah, wait." I spun, fast, cutting her off. You don't get to talk to me anymore." Her mouth snapped shut, eyes wide, and I walked out, Rebecca behind me, the door clicking shut like a lock turning. The hallway stretched long and gray, the air cooler, quieter. I leaned against the wall, hands in my pockets, breathing slow. My phone buzzed Mom, checking on Sophie. "All good," I texted back, fingers steady now. Rebecca clapped my shoulder. "Court'll seal it next week. You did it." I nodded, throat tight, the weight lifting but leaving scars. I'd fought for Sophie, torched their lies, and walked away with my head up. Stella's sob echoed in my mind, Levi's whimper too, but I shoved them down. They'd built this fire, I just lit the match. "Gonna grab a beer," I said, voice rough, heading for the exit. Rebecca grinned. "You earned it." The glass doors swung open, sunlight hitting my face, sharp and clean. I stepped out, the city noise rushing in, horns, chatter, life moving on. My boots hit the pavement, steady, sure. Sophie was safe. The house was mine to sell. They'd crumble under the debt, the shame, the wreckage I'd left. I pictured them, Stella alone, Levi broken, and felt the knot in my gut loosen. Not joy, not yet. Justice, maybe. Close enough. I was bouncing Sophie on my knee when Mom called with the news, her voice crackling through the phone like static on a bad line. The new apartment smelled of fresh paint and cardboard, sunlight streaming through the blinds, cutting stripes across the unpacked boxes. Sophie giggled, her little hands clutching my shirt, her curls bouncing as I jostled her. "Grandma says hi," I said, grinning, holding the phone to my ear. Mom's sigh came heavy, weighted. "Stella's gone, Elijah. Vanished. Nobody knows where." I stopped bouncing, the room going still. Sophie's laughter fading into a hum. Gone? I echoed, voice low, rough against the quiet. Mom hesitated, dishes clinking in the background. Yeah. Left her place imprint unpaid, stuff still there. Cops think she just took off. I set Sophie down, her feet pattering to a box of toys, and leaned back, the couch creaking under me. Sunlight warmed my face, but my chest felt cold, hollowed out. I pictured Stella alone, scrambling, maybe hopping a bus to nowhere, with that $60,000 debt choking her. Her choice, I said, flat, final. Mom's voice softened. I feel bad for her, hon. I snorted, short and sharp. Don't. Sophie dragged a stuffed bunny over, plopping it in my lap. Play, she demanded, eyes bright. I ruffled her hair, forcing a smile, the phone still pressed to my ear. She built this mess, Mom. Screwed us over. Ran when it hit her. The words tasted bitter but true. Mom sighed again, softer. I know. Just, Sophie's okay? I glanced at my girl, her giggles filling the space, and nodded. Yeah, we're good. I hung up, tossing the phone onto the cushion, its thud muffled by the fabric. The apartment was ours, now house sold. $100,000 in the bank, divorce sealed. I stood, stretching, joints popping, and crossed to the window. The city buzzed below, cars honking, kids shouting a fresh start humming outside. My boots scuffed the hardwood. Steady, sure, but my hands balled in my pockets, nails biting my palms. Relief washed through me, cool and clean, but something lingered anger, maybe, or the ghost of what we'd had. I saw Stella's face in that courtroom, tears streaking, Levi's whimper next to her. They'd torched it all. I just swept the ashes. Daddy, look, Sophie called, waving the bunny, its ears flopping. I turned, crouching, the floor cool under my knees. Cute, kiddo, I said, voice softening. She beamed, toddling over, and I scooped her up, her weight grounding me. The fight was done, custody mine, their lives wrecked, justice served. But my chest ached, faint, for her, the little girl who'd never know her mom's full story. I hugged her tighter, her hair tickling my chin. We're gonna be happy, I murmured, half to her, half to me. She nodded, oblivious, and I set her down, watching her scamper off. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, the bottle cold against my palm, and popped the cap with a hiss. The first sip burned, sharp and good, washing down the last of the weight. Stella was gone, lost to her own ruin. Levi, too, probably still crumbling. Me? I had Sophie. This place. A life to build. I stepped onto the balcony, the breeze ruffling my shirt, and leaned on the rail. The sun dipped low, painting the skyline gold. We made it, I said, quiet, to nobody. The city answered with noise, alive, and I drank again, letting it settle.